Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Silly Linguistics. I've got a special guest with me today. It's Josh from NativLang. Can you say hello, Josh?
Hello.
So,
I know that was a quick hello. I'll spill some more words on you very shortly. I'll let you run through the introduction.
yes, that would be good since we're going to be talking. I've been watching Josh's channel for a while now, and I was thinking, I wonder who I can get to be on this podcast. And actually, Josh was one of the first people I ever contacted, but we're so busy. I think it might have taken 1 or 2 months to get this all together.
It might have even been longer than that, right? Maybe 2.5 months, 3 months. It's been a while.
Yes, because I think we live in such different times. I would send you an email and I get a response like a week later, and then you would send me a response and I would respond a week later, and then
it's the nature of the business, you know. I mean, us creators, we got to go dark sometimes. We just got to get our minds off of things and just work, churn out work.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, well, why don't you tell me a little about yourself? So we're obviously going to talk about your actual work, but like, what led up to that? Like, were you interested in languages as a child and things like that?
Okay, well, I'll tell you, I've been probably all in on language since about the age of, I want to say 12 or 13.
Oh, okay.
Those are the first years where I can remember reading grammar books and studying multiple languages, where that was a thing for me, or at least became a thing. Before that, I was really into art, and I swear I would have become a cartoonist. So
Oh, wow.
We'll get back to that. Clearly, it did influence my later activities. I guess a little before that, I had access when I was really young to Spanish-speaking friends. I learned a lot of Spanish. I was halfway immersed in the languages, and my neighbors across the street, the Diazes, they're still family to me, and they were very early on in my life, and they were an influence on that. But I think there were early moments that pushed me towards linguistics specifically, and not just learning languages, because obviously I could be interested in English, in Spanish, in French, and whatever was coming my way. Probably the earliest I can remember. Story time. So I was in... I was taking music lessons. My family couldn't afford it, but my grandparents were like, "You have to take an instrument. This is going to be good for your intellectual development." So they ponied up the cash for us to take, me and my brother, to take musical instrument lessons. We had to choose the instrument. I chose piano. So one day we're on the road to music lessons, and we're in a parking lot somewhere. My parents had this old Suburban, this giant thing they used to haul kids around in. I'm in the back seat. We're in a parking lot. And my mom has her, arm up over the front seat. She cranes her neck back, and she's talking with me. She starts going over color terms in Spanish. Just reciting, the basic color terms. Words for, blue, azul, everything, down the list, all the basic colors. And I don't know what it was about that moment. There was something about that time, but it's the first time that I can explicitly remember I had this realization that there are these different sounds that if I know how to say them, or if I know how to understand them, I can make something out of what somebody else is saying. But if I don't know those sounds and I can't understand them or I can't make them, I'm locked out of this whole way of communicating with somebody else. So I think that was, I didn't put it in those words, and that's not even a really linguistic way to put it, but that was the basic sort of moment of realization for me, the first that I can remember, where I thought, there's something that I can analyze here. There's something I can think about.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
that's an example of how I guess I fell in with the language nerd and linguistic nerd crowd pretty early on in life, just because of moments like that.
Yeah. What happened with me is I taught myself German, and I've lived my whole life up until that point as a native English speaker, and the thing is, if you never think about language, it's just kind of there, and you're like, well, this is just how we say it, And there's a curious thing if you never learn about any other language. Like language, it's just a thing on the wall. It's like
Yeah,
it
absolutely.
just there. You don't put much thought into it. And I started learning German, and then I was like, yes, okay. So the English word is this, and then the German word is this. It's like I just thought of the German as like a variation,
Huh.
like a variation of like these ideas. And then I was watching, like similar to you, I had this kind of eureka moment of, I was watching this, I was watching Star Trek with my friend, and he was learning German, so we decided to watch, Star Trek in German. And I just had this light bulb moment of realizing that, wait, English is just one of the ways that you can put this stuff together. And I think if you live your whole life with the one language, you never kind of look outside of that for that split second. Like English just seemed like just one of the other languages out there in the world, and not just the core of my experience.
That's interesting. So you think it's the exposure? I mean, it could have been the same for me with English and Spanish. It's just the exposure when you're young, or maybe at any stage of your life, to these different languages, and
Yes,
that prompts a little realization.
I think the realization is that English is not the only way that you can communicate, because obviously you can get taught there's this language called Spanish, there's this language called German, but only once you actually learn those languages and you get that really full experience of, well, you can actually exist and have a whole life in this language, and that's something you don't think about.
Right. Yeah. I totally get it.
Yes. Okay. So, did you study linguistics at university?
uh, Kinda. So I have no advanced degrees in this stuff. I think I make that pretty clear in my videos. I definitely have made it clear in many comments. I don't want anyone to come up with the impression that this guy's the expert. We have to trust everything he says. This is stuff that I research to no end, but I am not the expert in any of it. So that's my big caveat. That's the warning label that should go on the package in front of my videos when I'm selling them to you. But everything after that is like entertainment, fun, languages, just like with your webcomics. It's one of those things you do because it's fun and because you're entertaining other people and you're entertained by it yourself. But yeah, I have no advanced degrees in this stuff, and my undergrad diploma does not say linguistics on it, doesn't have the word anywhere in my degree. So I guess I wasn't supposed to, but it didn't keep me away from it. So I guess I'll start in high school. Just another little story time here. Throughout high school, especially as I got a little bit older, I had this habit of writing down any questions about language, the same kind of questions that came up in that realization. Just what's going on here? What am I noticing? Specifics about different languages, specifics about the Romance languages. How does this work in Latin? So I would write these questions down. I started I would bike over to my local bookstore. I would plop down in front of the linguistics section, and I would just pull the next book off the shelf, start reading through it. I went through a whole bunch of books that way. I'd take notes. I'd go home. I'd boot up my little modem, and I'd go online and I'd start searching. I mean, it sounds so nerdy, but I think it was a really good habit. By college, that became a really natural process for me. So I would have same thing. I would have questions, and those questions transcended my degree. They were out of my pay grade, but I still wanted to know the answer. I mean, again, what's the difference between Catalan and Occitan? How do Proto-Indo-European cases work? Things like this. So I'd write them down. And this is in college, I'd write them down. Same deal. I had this black folder that kept getting chunkier and chunkier and more tattered over time. I'd stick the questions or the printouts or anything I got in there. I would just scribble all over everything. I would haul that thing up to the 8th floor of my library, go over, plop down in the linguistics section, even though if they were dimming the lights and it was late and I was the only one on the whole floor or that section of the floor. So I was surrounded by grammars. I was surrounded by, theories about language and linguistics, and I would just read until I got answers. And that was just my habit. That was my thing. So that was the closest I had to, well, I guess that's not the only formal training I had. In my last couple of years of university, I also took any classes on offer that I could find in the course catalog that were being taught by the historical linguistics professor at my university.
Okay.
That in a lot of ways that just ended up adding more questions to the heap, more questions into the folder.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
and honestly, a lot of the exercises in the book they were fun, but they were often really basic for me.
yes.
Not always. I don't want to come across like that, but it was one of those things where the thing I
You
really
want
got out of
more.
that class was access to the ways that linguists were going about doing these things,
Yes.
and really access to the professor. I frequently pestered him and kept him late at past closing at his office hours. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's my formal official training in college, at least.
Oh, okay. Well, what happened with me is I never actually studied actual linguistics, but my entry into language was through German. And then when I joined the language community in 2014, then I was asking people this question, like, why is English a Germanic language? It doesn't look like any of the other ones.
Right.
And like, it doesn't sound like it, doesn't look like it. I mean, Dutch looks like German and Afrikaans looks like Dutch. And so you can see the connection there, but you can't see the connection with English. And then they'll tell me, oh, it's because it's descended from this language. And I'm like, okay, but Old English feels so different to modern English. Like, how did we get there? But the more I look into it, the more I say, no, English is definitely a Germanic language. Like, all these words like, love, Liebe, have, haben, and there's a funny sentence in Afrikaans and English, my pen is in my hand. And it's spelled exactly the same way, it means exactly the same thing. My pen is in my hand. And that shows you how close the languages can be sometimes. Whereas other times it's like completely different, and they're certainly not mutually intelligible, but they're certainly related.
So I think without formal training, you stumbled on a fundamental insight, the comparative method, basically.
Yes,
right?
yes. Yes, and then once I had discovered this thing, I was pestering all the people in the group, like, why are these languages related? Why do you call them related? What do you need to show that they're related? Okay, so obviously Afrikaans looks like German and Afrikaans looks like English, but is that enough to call them related? Like, I even asked the question, how many words do you need? And I said, no, it's not about words. It's about systematic correspondences. And I was like, oh. and then finally it made sense. And then actually that was really enlightening moment for me, because I could almost imagine like going back in time and thinking, wait, the language that I speak is descended from a language that was spoken like 1,000 years ago. And that was a great moment for me.
Yeah, what a realization, huh?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think, to be honest, I felt very disconnected as a child. I didn't really know where I fit into my family and into the world and blah blah blah, all this stuff. But for some reason, learning about language makes me feel more connected. Like I'm just continuing a thing that's been going on for centuries. Like the way we speak English now is not the same when we spoke it 10 years ago. It's not the same where we spoke it 20 years ago. Like when I was growing up, we didn't say things like, that was sick, man. And like, like all we said is cool, that was cool. Everything was cool. Like, oh, that's cool. And we still say that, but cool is just one of the words we use nowadays and not the main one,
So you've got the comparative method, you've got systematic sound correspondences going through your head, you've got change over time, and that's something that you kind of stumbled on as you were learning on your own.
Yes. And then things just kept on growing from there, because when I started my page, literally I started my page because I made that page because I just wanted to post all about Atlantean and funny memes and stuff. The first thing I ever posted on my page was a meme in Atlas. And it was like, this is the kind of quality content you're going to be getting on my page. But things continue to evolve from there. I started posting things about language, like, oh, this is an interesting thing I discovered. Posting Wikipedia articles or posting articles that I found online, and then I mean this is an evolving process. But like, then I started posting my own original content. Like I wrote a very long article breaking down the differences and similarities between English and German. That German is actually not as far from English as you might think, because I said as long as you know what sound shifts to look for, you can actually decode it.
And also which vocabulary to restrict your search to, right? Like
yes.
That's an important part of it.
Yeah, because it's like, was ist deine Name? Like, was is what, ist is, deine can be related to thine. We know what thine means. Name is name. You know, and so
that one shows up all around. I mean, name in particular, or closer to the German pronunciation there. That one shows up all around Indo-European. That's a fun one.
Yeah. And so
actually, most of that vocabulary does.
So talking about evolution, like when did you start making media, and was YouTube the first thing that you tried, and how did that change and evolve over time?
Wow, that was a long process for me. It really was. I guess when I was in high school, I really started getting into doing a little bit of web design, coding. That's the time I got into code. I'm still into computer programming right now, and I take classes. So kind of as a buffer for anything that should happen in my life. If this isn't successful, I'm going to lean on that. That's going to be my path forward, and I think you share that, right?
Yes.
I understand you program as well, so
yes.
That's something we share, right? That's a good way forward. It's the way of the future.
Yeah.
But we're talking about things past, so
yeah.
I kind of kept that up. I would take notes. I would construct these little mini lessons. I don't think it ever went under the name NativLang at that point, but probably around, I think I usually pin it to around 1998 is the earliest, when I was young, the earliest stuff that I made and tried to put together and make something out of, actually produce some content.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until college and after college that I actually started thinking, well, maybe I could write some stuff, do some blogging, I don't know, something.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel the need for it. I was satisfied with my linguistic training, all the books that I was reading, all those notes I was taking, all the questions I was getting answered. But there was a time shortly after college where I was working a series of retail and desk jobs. You would have caught me behind a counter or behind a computer somewhere.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's a familiar story to a lot of people. But during that time, which was really a good time in my life, my mind still couldn't stop racing with all these language questions.
Yeah.
I'm still the same thing. I still have the same folder. I was still writing them down. I needed an outlet. I needed a way to share. I needed a way to reach out to other people who really cared about this stuff too, and share my own stories about language and my language learning process. I really went about it an odd way, but the outlet that attracted me the most, the easiest to imagine, was one that wasn't available to me at the time. That was world travel. Like, get on a plane, go somewhere, start speaking to somebody. If you want to do linguistics, if you want to do language, why not do that? Take the money that you're saving from working at your retail job, go travel. That was a problem for me.
Yes.
Whenever I flew, the whole time at altitude, I would suffer through this really intense ear pain and ear pressure. I've had ear trouble since I was a kid, and it didn't go away. I found some small scale treatments since then, but it's something that I suffered with every time I traveled. So traveling, the easiest way to travel was suddenly a difficult burden for me, or was at the time. So that wasn't the path available, but we had the internet.
Yes.
This amazing thing. I didn't need to hop on a plane. I didn't need to suffer. I could just go and share and find people who shared this passion online.
Yes.
So here I was, a language lover that life was keeping away from languages, and the internet became my outlet. I think any of those, kind of fast forward. So I started doing videos on YouTube. I started doing little, just like this. I would sit in front of a camera. I'd see my face on the screen like I could see right now. I would record and I would start talking. I had little notes at best, sometimes jotted down on my hands, like cover this, make sure you cover phonemes and allophones or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And I would record a little lesson, something I would share. I'd get comments back. I'd get corrections. It was just a great way for me to start publishing and posting content. I did other things as well, but that was the one where I noticed the community was growing and responding best on YouTube specifically, when I posted videos.
That's exactly what happened to me. Like, it's very interesting to trace how things have developed, but my Atlantean group wasn't that successful. Like, I think we reached a peak of about 80 members. And then I made the Silly Linguistics group, and it was like 50, 100, 200, 500, 1,000, 2,000. We're now at 27,000, I think. And it just keeps growing. And they just seem to
Congratulations on that, by the way.
Thank you.
That's good. That's a lot. That's a big number.
that is quite a few people, yes. And it's something I never could have predicted, but it's about taking those opportunities. And I just thought, this is working, And I thought, aha, this is so easy. I'm just going to make all these groups. And that's the one that took off, because it's just like people want this stuff. Like, I made a group about games, like video games and things like that.
Such a saturated market. I'm a gamer too. I love it, but that's a saturated market. Unless you have a unique take and you're really good at marketing or something, you have something unique about you, I guess.
Yes,
which we all do, but something marketable.
But I think we're quite lucky in the language space, because actually there really aren't a lot of people that are doing language. What we do is pretty much language entertainment. We try to be factual, and we might get things wrong, and we're not out there to just make stuff up, but it's about showing what's interesting about language.
Yeah, we're using. I mean, using could be interpreted in a weird way, but we're using those facts and the stories too. I mean, historians are giving us stories, linguists are giving us stories. We're using those facts to tell a joke, to have a punchline, to move somebody, to have somebody share your emotion for those same moments. Like when I was in that back seat and my mom's reciting the colors with me. Like, what is it about that moment? And you want people to share in that. It's something that really matters to you, right? Like, that's kind of what draws us in.
What's great when I post something on my page, and then someone comments, "How'd you know my life?"
Oh, we feel it, right? Like, Yep. Oh yeah. That's awesome. I love those.
What's really funny is that I studied computer science. I've got a master's in computer science.
So you're officially trained as a computer programmer, or at least as a computer scientist.
Yes.
You would fit in well with my family. I'm the black sheep in that way.
Oh, really?
I was the one who did something in the humanities, which was weird. It was either, I mean, the most divergent thing from computer sciences, including among my, I could go down the list, brother, uncle, I think my granddad was an engineer. My mom and dad were both computer programmers. My mom did formerly she studied physics in college. So that was a deviation. But other than that, they were all computer programmers. Now I do it, but I wasn't a computer scientist.
It's really,
I bow down to you, sir.
It's really funny because I was the only one in my family that did computers. My dad ran a business, and my mom did lots of odd jobs here and there. And so I was really at home just doing this all myself, and I really enjoyed it. Programming is very stimulating and very interesting and stuff. But I was always interested in media. I've always been interested in TV shows, books, movies, video games and stuff. And so that's how I kind of merged the two. I actually did my master's in video game technology. More specifically, it was how can we use a video game technology to more effectively teach game programming. And so
awesome. So it's a sort of that convergence between edu-gaming and technology.
Yes, but it was very, very, very technical. Like basically you can read the introduction, but beyond that it's like, so we have these things, and then you're like, okay, I don't understand any of it. I think at times my supervisor was like, yeah, it looks good.
Yeah, I was going to ask if you have any, indented paragraphs that have logical symbols or symbols from set theory in there or anything like that.
No,
Because if so, that's the kind of thing where eyes start to glaze over. I'll try and understand.
But it's very much like, okay, this is how you do things in programming. You've got all these concepts of like how things are supposed to work, and so I said, well, this is what I'm doing, and this is like it's got to be modular, so things you've got to you've got to be able to take things out and put things in. Okay, obviously, we won't go into detail on it because this is a linguist podcast. But
it's all related somehow.
Yeah,
it's
about
interdisciplinary.
Yes, it's all about systems. So the idea is that you have to explain like what are you trying to achieve and how are you going to achieve it. And that gets very, very technical. We know in linguistics can get very technical. Programming gets technical in a completely different way. Describe exactly how it works, but that was a really great tool for me to learn, really like to deal with a very, very tough academic and mental thing, because like you have this question like, can we improve video game education, and how do we do that? And so that you've really got to come up with a good answer for that and then validate it. You've got to say, does it actually work? And I was successful in that. My approach did work, and we did all the statistics and stuff, and that was really a great success for me.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Again.
So what happened after I finished my degree, I went out and I looked for a job. There was a startup doing video game stuff, so I joined them. But here's where life always takes detours, and I think anyone with a modicum of self-awareness or an awareness about the world knows that things don't always go to plan.
Oh yes.
And the truth is that there has been this thing that's been hanging around in the background. My family does unfortunately suffer from mental health issues. My dad has it. I haven't. There's a couple of uncles and cousins and relatives. And after I worked at that place for about 3 months, I just got to the point where I just couldn't do it anymore. The environment was quite stressful, I think. I just left there one day, and I just went to my mother and I said, can you help me? And then we just went to the hospital, and then we talked to them about what was happening. And they
I'm sorry to hear that. Were you able to, recover functionally pretty quickly, or did it take some time?
It took some time, but
yeah.
Actually, this I'm bringing this up because it's very relevant. Because what happened then is I quit work and I was just sitting at home because I'd realized in hindsight that I'd been fighting this kind of demon in the background my whole life, and like finally I was doing something. I was seeing a therapist. I was taking medication, and things were getting better. And so but I wasn't working, so I was just sitting at home on my computer, and then I was reading articles and watching YouTube and doing random things. I mean, if you don't have anything to do, you find stuff to do.
Sure, absolutely. The time fills itself. It really does.
Absolutely. And I just stumbled across this article about it was talking about the languages they made for Game of Thrones, and how so they hired this linguist called David Peterson, and
of course, yeah.
He made Dothraki and High Valyrian, but for one specific for one specific scene, what they did is they actually translated the French taunter from Monty Python into Attipori Valerian, and so he says what he's actually saying is not. It's not translated in the show, but what he's actually saying is your mother was a hamster. Your mother was a hamster, and your father smelled of elderberries.
Right.
I think, or Misa Elis Meninichi, if I remember that correctly. That.
Oh, good memory. Wow.
That your mother was a hamster. And I was reading it, and I was just utterly fascinated. I was like, I have to know everything about this. Like, and I don't have any requirements on my time, so I was just sitting there, and I could just spend as much time as I wanted to. So I was looking into it, and I started learning, and I found someone that put a wiki together, and I was finding cognates myself. Like, I was looking at High Valerian, looking at Attipori Valerian, looking at all these different things, and I was like, oh, I see how this works. Like, the J becomes a whatever, and so I like my language stuff had gotten to the point where like I could start to notice the similarities, and so I even put together a whole article like historical linguistics of High Valerian, and it was completely my own research, and I was quite proud of that because I was like, wow,
amazing.
Look what I managed to do.
Look what happens when you take a computer programmer and you give them an academic training, and then you set them loose on conlangs.
Yeah.
This is what you get.
Yes,
That's cool.
exactly.
That's really cool.
But this is what you get. I didn't realize it at the time, but obviously that was the genesis. Like, you're gonna go far, my son. Like,
so was that your first foray into conlanging? Your first conlang experience?
I've always loved languages, but they've always taken a back seat to programming. Programming and computer stuff. I've always played video games, if it's computer games, or video games on a console like Xbox and PlayStation and stuff. But there was this language stuff in the background. I made a language for a book series that I wrote during high school. That was basically a ripoff of Klingon. I just took Klingon and then I took Klingon's grammar and I just put different words in it. Like it was agglutinative and stuff. It was
so you re-lexified Klingon.
Yes, basically.
That's awesome.
And that was before I knew what the term agglutinative, but I understood the concept. I could see that there were these parts and how they fitted together. And then from there, many years later, I then made another language for another race in that book series. And I wanted that language to sound like regal and flowing and stuff. So I took a similar idea to Klingon, except instead of encoding the subject and the object in the prefix, I had separate subject and object prefixes. So I am a human is fala nuncium terran. So fa is I, la is it. So fala nuncium terran or something like that.
So before they had been, it was more fusional, to use the traditional typology there. It was more of a fusional thing you had going on, and then you split the subject and object markers.
Yes.
More agglutinative, again, to use the traditional typology. There's actually a paper about that criticizing our linguistic community in general, use of the term agglutinative. I included it in my, I'd have to look it up again. I read it and included it in my Hungarian video, and that's an interesting read because he pulls out some of the things sort of phonologically and morphologically that we're paying attention to, 3 Qs especially, that we're paying attention to that we think makes something agglutinative, and shows us that statistically we can't really prove that that's, I mean, to put it simply, that that's a thing.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
So that's
interesting.
an interesting. That might be an interesting read for you. I'll have to send that your way.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
a fun one, and
Definitely.
when I kind of wanted to follow up on a little bit more after reading the paper.
Oh,
But
okay. Yes,
yeah.
and so what
But
happened?
I like the term. I like going from. I can understand it. It's simple to understand. Going from fusional to agglutinative, or
Yes.
being analytic, isolating, all that stuff. It's
Yeah.
fun.
So and then I made that language, and then I just left that stuff for a while, and then I got into the Game of Thrones languages, and I got heavily into that. Like I was searching David Peterson interview and like David
Yeah.
Peterson Hi Valerian on YouTube, and it's like.
Did you read his book? It's fairly recent, I
Um,
think. The book that came out, popular
I'm
consumption book.
actually in the middle of that as we speak. It's funny you
Excellent.
mentioned that because that's actually loaded up on my phone. But at the time that was before that book came out. I just watched every interview, read every interview, like read every single post on his blog and stuff. Like whatever I could get, you know. Because there was a lot of missing pieces.
Yeah.
And then. I think I got kind of dissatisfied with that at some point because I wanted to keep going, but it's something made for media, and Joe Peterson only does as much as he needs. It's a job, so he only does as much as he needs to fulfill the lines. And I thought, well, I want this to be a proper thing. I want to be able to translate whatever I want to in Hibernarian. And the unfortunate reality is it just doesn't work like that. So. I think that's what kind of was in the back of my mind when we started this whole Atlantean thing was I can make this open source. You know, I can say anyone can learn this, anyone can add to it. I'm going to be the gatekeeper so everything stays together and like words that I add to Atlant have the correct phonotactics and things like that. But other than that, anyone's free to use it and to add to it and stuff. And I thought that was an interesting idea. And so it was my experience with High Valerian that actually got me to explore conlangs more closely, and I learned a ton from David Peterson. But what was very interesting about that specifically is that I was so active on the wiki that the other guys that I worked on was like, hey Rob, how's it going? And then like they were talking to me, and then eventually we were having chats and stuff, and then he added me on Facebook, and at that time I was getting like 2 notifications a day on Facebook, and then as soon as he added me, I was like, what's this thing? People talk about languages on the internet. And I was
Sign
like,
me up. Where is it? You're clawing at it.
yeah, exactly. For about 2 weeks, I was like, type. And I'm just like, what is this? What is this? What is this? Like, just posting and people are like,
It's a world of wonder that just opened up and dumped on you. You're like,
like, I need more.
yeah, I need more language, more language. Yeah.
Yeah. And
I've
so,
had those moments. I should say, I still have those moments. I go through those moments.
yeah.
All
So
the
it's
time.
like, give it to me. I want it.
Yeah.
And so I was just having a whale of a time, and about 3 weeks after I joined, we had that whole Serbian as a mother of language incident, and so I think that although that event was random and no one could have predicted it, I think my life has kind of led up to that point, because at that point I had the tools that I needed to do the things that I'm doing now. You know, I had enough academic background to deal with an academic topic. Like linguistics is a very academic topic. You know, like I would happily go read an article and they said, well, you see, in Proto-Indo-European, the nominative ending is S, and it has been reconstructed by blah 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 linguists in 1982. And if I typed that on my page, it would be like 100 dislikes, blah blah blah. Like, I don't understand that this page is shit. And like,
well, would you get that, or would you just get snooze, no reaction whatsoever, just crickets?
I don't know. Whatever would happen, I know it's a bad thing. So what I do,
it's not what you want.
Yeah. So I read these articles and I just read on. I have the background to be able to go into these things and to process them and to read them and like, what does it say? Can I make this interesting? You know, like, so what I did is, I wrote a very short post where I translated "I am a man" into Proto-Germanic, which is "ek imi manna," so it's got a germinated N, and that was a very very interesting thing, because then it started this whole discussion of like, oh, it's very interesting to see how things change. Because like "ek" became "ik," and "ich" and "ich" in Old English, and "I" in Modern English, and you can see all the connection. And once I started seeing the connection, I was like, oh, this is so interesting. And then I was talking to a person from Sweden, I think, or one of the Scandinavian countries, and I said, why, like, we got "ik," "ich," "I," you know, like, that makes sense. Where the hell does "jag" come from? Like, "jag" is Swedish.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh, well, what happened is that there was this vowel split, so "ek" became "jeg," and then it went from "jeg" to "jag," and in modern Swedish, sometimes people just drop the G, like,
Yeah, I've heard the G dropped entirely.
yeah, so there's like "there jag."
Yeah.
It is me.
In Iceland, it still has the fricative value, but it's not a plosive anymore.
Yes. So that was interesting, and then I made a comic where I just had this wonderful idea. I thought, why don't I? So after all this reading I did about all these proto languages, I was like, let's make this real for people. Let's have people complaining about the weather at various points in history. So I have people complaining about the weather in the Pontic Steppe in 4000 BC. Then I have people complaining about the weather in Scandinavia. People complaining about the weather in like 800 AD England. And so, like, I think...
So you have it in Proto-Indo-European, in Old Norse, and Old English?
Yes. And I think in Proto-European it would be something like Ero Rete Keltum or something. Oh,
yeah.
Keltum. I don't know how to pronounce it.
Make sure that you get your Kentums and Shatums right
there. Yes. And I put that out there, and people absolutely loved it. Like, I sent it to my friend, and it was like, he said to me, I literally laughed out loud when I read that, because it's like, that's something you don't expect to see that, like, and I was talking to someone else, and like, I think I'm in a unique position. I don't think there's much chance that I'm going to be in conflict with someone else, like we're doing similar things, because I don't think anyone's making jokes in Proto-Indo-European.
Yeah, webcomics about historical linguistics, I think that is that puts you in a niche there. That's
yes. Yeah, but
one, I mean, the good thing is there are a lot of niches, but this is one where people actually care.
Yes,
we care.
Yes.
Really.
Because it just goes with the territory. You put something out there and people have comments, and they're always right. But it's like, it's not that I'm angry that people have comments. It's like I'm angry with myself. Like, shit. Like, it shouldn't be better. Like, people shouldn't have to correct it. Like, people shouldn't have to tell me, like, this is wrong. Like, and they're always right. It's like, because unfortunately, I think I used the wrong verb ending in Proto-Indo-European. I used T instead of me, and like, but people picked it up. They said this is wrong, and I was like, oh, okay, thanks. It was
clearly somebody's going to recognize, and I mean, it doesn't even take knowing Proto-Indo-European. You just have to, know Slavic, and wait a second, that's a third person singular ending. What are you doing putting that on the verb? And, they're right. They're right.
but what's great about it is you put these things out there and people actually respond. But I get these amazing comments because people are saying things like, like takes me back in time, because I can almost imagine this like as a real language. Because I think the problem with these academic texts is it makes sense. Their job is to describe these systems. Our job is to make it entertaining.
Yeah. Well, to make it real too, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
yes. Because
I think that's part of entertaining, but
yes,
to bring it to life.
if you just read paradigms, people. It took me long enough to realize, like, what do these paradigms mean? We got dash M. What the hell does dash M mean? You know?
Well, what's great is I spend quite a bit of time, especially on some videos, but sometimes just who knows why, but for free time, just for fun, going through old manuscripts online, just reading, stuff from the Middle Ages. And you look at some old grammars and you realize that is exactly how people used to be taught a language.
Yes.
Like that, just here, read this. We're going to recite these, we're gonna recite these verb endings, not even the verb. There's not even going to be any content there. It's just grammar,
Yeah. Amo, amas, aman.
Oh, as, amus. Yeah, exactly. And
it's like,
I guess in a way there's...
Yeah, and it's like, I wonder why people don't find languages interesting. It's an absolute mystery. We'll never know.
Head scratcher there. Yeah. If you have to read this research paper on reconstructing Proto-Indo-European and whether or not the laryngeal theory is correct or whether or not their current iteration is the best iteration of it, like that's hard to stomach. That's hard to stomach for me sometimes. I'm somebody who's a fan of this stuff.
Yes.
Usually can follow along with the gist of these papers.
Yes.
Now, I'm sure somebody who's coming at this who has just the passing question, like, oh, what was Proto-Indo-European? Or they don't even know the name Proto-Indo-European. They're just thinking, wait, English, Russian, and all these other, they come from the same ancestral parent language? Like, what was that like? You're like, oh, okay, read this stack of papers and get through this theory, and we're going to talk about Werner's Law, and we're going to talk about all this stuff. And then when you come back, we're going to talk about whether or not we can posit a certain phonological form for any of this. So like you can't even pronounce it. You can't even read it or say any of this. I think that's really hard. That's a kicker for a lot of people.
I think the real problem is there's so much knowledge out there, but it's not being made accessible. And I think what I'm really trying to do is I read all this stuff and I'm like, whenever I write something, I read it and I think, kind of put my mind back, can I understand that if I know nothing about language? Like whenever, sometimes I even explain the word cognate. Like, by the way, cognate means is that but that's good.
That's a good exercise though, defining those basic terms, because I find that every time I have to put them in a context, I either have to define them a different way for the examples or. Trying to get at the source there. It's that old Socratic thing of what do we actually mean when we say these words?
Yes.
Does it really work? Is this really a universalizable or really a universal definition? That's a tough question.
So most of the things that I post on my page is just silly language pictures that I found around the web. But every now and then I will throw up like this academic article, and then people are like, wow, this is so cool. But then I realized like this might be seen as a bit of a bait and switch, because like they seeing this page called "Steal the Vagabond" and silly language, like, oh, don't you think this word looks so funny? And it's like, oh, well, you see in Proto-Indo-European, and it's like, and
you
then
feel like
you
need asterisks all over everything, and you're gonna have a big note at the bottom, and then citations.
But it's so funny because I'm like, get people in the door by silly pictures. And then suddenly spring like advanced linguistics on them, and it's like I'm gonna convert all of you. You watch.
You will. Well, some of your posts definitely already have. I mean, I'll see even on Twitter you're getting shared quite a bit.
Yes. It's crazy because I spend most of my time on my page looking for things to post. And you'll be amazed that the things that are shared. One of the things that got shared a lot recently is someone wrote a whole post, but they replaced some of the words with numbers. But those numbers were an approximation, were a French phonological approximation of an English word. And so like
kind of rebus in a way.
Yeah, so like I've sank to a new low. And then the word sank as 5. And then people are like, what is this? And we've got like 400 shares. Like I would post it. Like normally I post things and I check up on it later, like, oh, okay, it's got a few shares. Like, I check it, I cover out later, like, it's already got 100 shares. Yeah. And then I check this morning.
That's a good reason not to self-censor too. Like, obviously, if it's irrelevant, that's one thing. But if you think, well, this is no, the audience isn't going to get it. They're not going to understand this kind of thing. You got to test it out. You got to give people credit, because we human beings, we're pretty clever and inventive. We will find on the internet, we will find a way to solve problems when there are.
But other times, I'll post something and people don't like it, and you just go to stats and like unlike, and like, what is happening? And I
unfollow. What happened?
Unfollow. I made a joke on April Fool that I was going to shut down the page, and I got 60 unlikes. Whoops. But I think my page can survive a few blunders. So with your YouTube stuff, like, what is the experience for you, like, dealing with comment, like positive and negative, like what is that like for you?
Well, for me, I would say I'll throw out a YouTube term here. It's all engagement. Like, if somebody's engaging, for the most part, obviously there are cases around the edge. And I'm going to say for my channel, they're really around the edge. This NativLang community, and it's grown beyond me. But this NativLang community is that I'm a part of, and really obviously the animating and storytelling part of, but I'm just a part of. This has grown to be, it has to be one of the best communities on YouTube. Everyone's really focused and engaged, and clearly opinionated, but they care. They really care about language. You've got to have a similar experience in your audience. Just people care about linguistics and language. They love this stuff. And so when they're engaging, I see that as a positive, especially, and I would say these days, especially if somebody's coming and contributing and saying, I know this language, we do this. I've studied this. I have so many people who come and say, in my master's or in my doctorate, we did this. We actually were able to show this. We weren't able to prove that. I got that in the linguistic relativity video I did years ago. And that's really cool. That to me is just eye-opening. It's one of the things I love about the internet. So you're not going to find me. I know it's really easy to commiserate online, and I could find some comment somewhere that bugs me or sticks with me. But most of the ones that actually stick around that bug me are things about, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is something I need to rethink. And then I'll be up at night thinking about this thing. And I'm like, man, why did this person leave this comment? Why? What is it? I think I'm right. But do I need to go reread some paper? Do I need to do I need to figure this out? Those are the things that still can catch me. Somebody coming up and saying, I can't think of something off the top of my head, but saying, your voice sounds stupid. You said too many times. I don't say very much, but you use too many filler words. I don't know what it is. Somebody could, I'm sure I've had a deluge of that kind of stuff in my spam folder somewhere. But that's just... I hate to be so callous, but I think that's kind of like a normal part of being online. So it's kind of up to us as creators it's up to us as creators to find ways to handle that and to help. I don't know what our obligations are, but maybe if we talk ethics here, there's a little bit of an obligation to help other creators, to help each other, and to help the community be better. But things like censoring or things like, shouting back at somebody, hey, you idiot, you didn't know this about Proto-Indo-European, when somebody genuinely has an opinion, that's never been my style. That's never been my way forward. I love my community, though. It's awesome. It's awesome.
Well, I just like the language community in general. But what's also great is all the people that I've met.
We can be, sorry to interrupt you, we can be pedantic.
Right?
Like, I've noticed that. We can be very pedantic. Just to the point where we're nitpicking on something that is barely even a theory. But anyway, sorry to interrupt you.
and so like I've met these people that are like native speakers of languages I've never even heard of, and then it's like, it just struck me like, this is their daily language, like whoa, like, that's weird. It's such a different experience.
Something you would only see in Ethnologue, right? And they don't even have notes for it or even grammars for it on Ethnologue, and somebody's leaving you a comment in that language.
That's... it's so funny. Like, I was talking to these people. So there's this language called Romani. It's a Indo-Iranian language of the
absolutely
Indo-European group. And then I was talking to him, and I was like, I would really like to showcase this language. Like, can you translate this thing for me? And they were like, well, actually, our language doesn't have an orthography. And I'm like, shit. Like, that is not a problem I thought I would ever run into. Like, I finally come across a language that, like, it's just not a good idea to write it down, because
you're like
it's so
marginally attested.
It's like...
Not like Romani's marginally attested, but really, you're right. It doesn't have any standards. It doesn't have any...
It's so pluricentric, and like, there's so many different kinds, and it really is, like, I heard this definition once, like, that was so apt, like, writing... People put so much stock on writing, but the thing is, language is what we're doing right now. It's words coming out of mouths produced by a human. So, most human languages, well, not most, all human languages are like that, unless we're talking about sign language or something.
Yeah. That's an interesting thing to see writing as a technology. I don't know if you said you've been watching the channel for a while now, and I know you have, but if you saw Thoth's Pill, or if anyone listening saw Thoth's Pill, that was... wow, what a major production in my life that was, but it was so much fun. And one of the things that really came out of that way of telling the story was seeing writing as a technology. So it's not the case that writing, like we feel like, follows from language, follows from speaking, follows from the words I'm speaking right now. It's a different technology in a way.
A project that I'm still actually working on, but... I realized a while ago that actually English speakers are unified by their orthography. Like, the human brain is so good at... So the main difference with different English dialects, like, I've got a South African accent, you've got an American accent, or... where do you live in America or Canada? Because I know those accents are similar.
So our accents are similar, especially as you travel out west, and the areas they cover get a lot broader. My accent is somewhat indistinguishably Southern Californian, especially if I'm speaking with friends, it gets a little worse. But Western states, I don't know what the dialect area is called, but it's a really wide one. So I have things like, I say I have tapped butters and whatever else you can say there. I have the cot merger, all the fun things that you can find diagnostically to identify somebody who comes from Southern California are going to apply to me. Well, I'd say, the Western United States more generally, they're going to apply to me. We have certain things like the California vowel shift that, especially when I lapse into a lower register, I guess a lower prestige register would be the common sociolinguistic way to put it. I definitely do a bit more of that. But you can hear it in my speech.
But now what's really interesting about that is that if you took a sound, like you transcribe something like but or bat or Bart, it's like what word is that actually? Because it depends on the dialect. Because I said I wrote ass in IPA, and I said this is either a South African saying ice, or it's a Scottish person saying ass, and you don't actually know. Only by hearing it in context will you realize, this is actually a Scottish person. So
that's a fun little brain teaser there. I noticed that in a few of your comics that you'll hold a feature steady and do these little comparisons like that. Like I saw another one where you did the same sentence in different Romance languages, pairs of Romance languages, and that was a fun one too. It just reminds me of that.
That one was super popular on Twitter. That's the most shared thing I've had so far. I think got something like 65 shares, and I've already got about 200 followers on my Twitter. I've got about 4,000 on Facebook, but the Twitter is a lot smaller. And so when I get like I normally get like 1 or 2, and I got 64 or 65. Like that was huge. But
we love the Romance languages, and that was it. No, it was just a cool format. I mean, it really was.
Yes, it was a very interesting thing, and I have to give credit to the native Romance speaker who sent me that, because he had told me that there were all these correspondences, and I said, well, can you write a bunch for me?
Yeah.
And then he came up with these sentences that, like, it's not only are they written the same, but they also mean the same. Right. And so I put this out there, and people, this is amazing. And so I was getting all these shares, and people really connected with that, and like you really don't know what's going to take off. And it's just super interesting to put stuff up there. You see, I think when I was younger, like, I don't know if scared is the right word, but like, it's you have to be really strong in yourself and have a very strong idea of what you want to put stuff out there, because you put stuff out there, and like, I think the only thing worse than bad criticism or like bad comments is no comments. I mean, you put stuff out there and be like, and you don't get any comments, like, because my family didn't understand computers, and they understand languages even less. So I'm just glad that I found this community, and I can have these connections with people.
Yeah, and it probably for you, if it was like for me, it wasn't just the act of putting stuff out there. It was the act of spending all this time learning a thing and putting all this dedication into building something that you think might be worth sharing, and you're not sure, and you hope that somebody's going to give you gentle feedback on, and you put it out there, and there's either silence or there's just some random comment on how terrible it is, how weird it is, or who do you think you are.
I remember what I was talking about. I was talking about the orthography of English. Now, writing does a very interesting thing. It actually unites us, because speaking, you very quickly tune into what the accent is doing. So it very quickly becomes apparent that the R sound is representing some kind of theoretical vowel in the space.
Yes.
That because we all have these like hypothetical vowels that are realized in certain ways, so they aren't represented in the orthography, they aren't represented in the orthography reliably, but if you say the word ice, and then you realize, oh, he's saying the word ice, and then I'm going to link that R sound to the I diphthong, and so when you first hear an accent, your brain is trying to work out the sound, which like hypothetical sounds and vowels and all these things is he using, and like, so you say that you have this hypothetical diphthong, how's it being realized, and then you go the other way, he's got this vowel sound, what is he using it to realize? And when you're talking to someone of a different accent, your brain does that very, very quickly.
But not necessarily evenly, right? Like, some things seem to stick out more than others.
Yeah.
For instance, for an English speaker, that R is a pretty good diagnostic feature we pay attention to when we're listening to an accent.
Yes.
I would imagine some things like certain vowels or diphthongs were a little more lax as a term in linguistics, so I don't want to be ambivalent here,
but if you say something like, I have a cat and my cat sat on the mat, now if you say that in a different dialect, it would be realized differently. But the thing is, because no matter what accent you're using, you write it in the same way. We united, and so if everyone wrote an IPA, it would be a nightmare. It would be an absolute nightmare, like knitted consonants and like
So that's a parallel world for you to explore. What would that look like if that were our written communication?
Because
I think it would start out as a nightmare, and it probably might persist as a nightmare, but it'd be a fun sci-fi thing to explore.
But it's so funny. Sometimes we do that on the Facebook group, and I'm like, what the fuck is Vagabond? You know, it's like, I can't pronounce this thing. It's like, what does it mean? And if you write it in standard orthography, I'm like, but like in normal speech,
okay. Yeah.
In normal speech, like we do all sorts of weird things with our words. You know, it's like bottle. You know, it's like, what the hell is bottle? That sounds like nubby. You know, it's like got all these horrible stuffs everywhere. It's like, oh, you're saying bottle. But it's amazing. I just had this huge revelation. I was like, wow, like, I even made a comment about it, like, if everyone wrote an IPA, no one would understand each other. Because this orthography ties us all together, and there's so much phonological variation, that it's just crazy. So the project that I want to do is, I don't know, I've already collected some. I've asked people to give IPA transcriptions of themselves saying a certain phrase, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up with an orthography for each major accent, and then show that actually, like, these almost languages are not as close as we think. You know, because we're so good at working out working out these details. Because if you were a robot and you were told that at is always pronounced at, and someone comes along and says at, then the robot would be like, what are you saying? I don't understand you. But humans never had that problem. They're like, oh, you got a weird accent, but I still understand you fine. You know, because...
Well, have you visited Forvo.com? Have you played around with that site at all?
Yes, where you can submit pronunciations.
Yeah, so there's a database for you to lean on if you want to start transcribing other people's phonemes or pronunciations. Yeah. Their renderings of certain terms that they've submitted, and they at least give location. Now, you don't know for sure how native a native speaker everyone is, but you know, maybe the noise will cancel out and you can get some good data from there and start transcribing things from different varieties of English. Or if you're aiming for an international thing, all kinds of there's a local pronunciation for me, international. It's very, very American, very Western, Western US right there. But international pronunciations, get all kinds of transcriptions going on for dialects of anything. I don't know, Spanish. I'm thinking too Romance here, but
it's so funny, because like Spanish and Italian, for instance, are not that far. Like when you actually sit down and think about it, like a Spanish person can understand quite a lot of what the Italian person is saying. And so, like,
I actually had an example of that in action. I was at a store at a store in New York City, and there was a lady who came in. She only spoke Italian, and she was trying to get somebody to help her. One of the workers there eventually came around, and he, to me, had a Dominican accent. He started speaking with her, and they were able to have a basic conversation where he asked her what she needed, he told her where it was, you know, all that kind of stuff. They communicated enough, you know?
Yeah.
It works. It can work.
Yeah.
With goodwill, it can work.
But it's funny, those are seen as separate languages, and there are. I mean, there's obviously a debate with the difference between language and dialect.
Yeah, let's solve that now. Right here. Let's.
Right now. But I think it's just a very interesting way that writing has affected the way we view things, because like Swedish, Danish, and Norwegian are mostly mutually intelligible, but. Well, at least certain types of them. But, like, they're regarded as separate languages, and they're written differently. If Americans wrote English in a certain way, like, they had completely unique orthography. Obviously, it has small differences, but let's just say you had completely unique orthography, and it distinguished all the things that American English distinguishes that British English and South African English don't. Then it would be a lot easier for people to see the differences. And if if I wrote something like "I like Survivor," you'll be like, what the fuck does that mean? Like
What was that again? Could you repeat that?
It's a South African English way of saying "I like Survivor." So
Oh,
so
okay.
everything
Yeah, I didn't
gets
catch that at all.
everything gets monophthongized, so it becomes "I like
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Survivor."
Yeah, as soon as you said it, I guess clearly or more standardly, we'd usually say clearly, right, in common
Yeah.
speech. But as soon as you translated it for me, I was able to get it.
but like at what point would that become a language? Well, obviously united that because we're hearing English from all over the place, the varieties never diverge too far. But if I wrote A then LAAK,
Oh, yeah.
no one would understand it. Absolutely no one would
I
understand it.
think you'd get some linguists who would venture guesses, and we'd be able to get it pretty quickly, I think. But yeah, as far as written daily communication is concerned, forget it.
Yeah, and it's just so funny. We're so used to writing that like I can write really quickly, but if I have to write, like sometimes we mess around and we use like non-standard orthography just to be funny, and
Yeah.
you start writing really slowly. Like you write meat and like the thing that you eat, like MEET, and
Yeah.
like when you start writing like that, you actually start writing much slower because you're thinking about every single word that you're putting down. Well, when I'm typing like standard, I'm just like because it's this whole process, and I think the way writing ties into that is that writing gives us a lot of benefits, but it's actually obscuring a huge amount of complexity. But because it's not taking into account all the differences between all the different dialects, because like the something that we say, like the word middle, for instance, in some dialects, the L is almost syllabic, so middle.
Middle, yeah.
Yeah, middle. Whereas in my accent, it's two sort of mid ill.
Okay.
And so you could represent that in an orthography, and that stuff just absolutely fascinates me. Like I could go on about that all day, but the point was that I want to put this little project together, and I put it out there, and then people can actually see, like, this is a different way of looking at language, this is a different way of looking at orthography, and to get away from the topic a bit and to broaden the discussion a bit, like, it's about looking at language differently and dealing with these things in a different way, because we can all use the standard orthography. We've all been taught it. I can write things in standard English. You can understand it. And when you read it, you'll pronounce it with your accent. But actually, there's a huge amount of stuff going on underneath, and learning what's happening underneath and exposing that to people can actually make this stuff very interesting. Because if you just say that's how you spell the word, that's boring. But for instance, if you do this thing that I'm planning to do, you show all these different what these different orthographies could be. That actually there's a huge amount of complexity, and actually spelling isn't boring.
Yeah.
Or it doesn't have to be.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be. And I think even the spelling itself, that's part of the story of our language. I mean, it's buried inside of English spelling, standard English spelling, are subsystems and quirks and all these other ways of doing things. I mean, we've got a Latinic system borrowed in here that allows us to, even when we change the accent on things like medicine and medicinal, we're still spelling the root the same way so we can identify it. That's going to be lost in IPA. All that stuff's going to be lost. The etymology, the roots, that's something that I think we carry more than we realize in our own spelling, in our own language.
Yes, and orthographical systems carry a huge amount of like extra information, like the reason date has a B in it is because some smartass decided that they wanted to link it to the Latin debtum.
Oh, right, yes.
And so
you're taking me back. That's part of the research for my Shakespeare video, what Shakespeare sounded like.
Yeah.
I got to read through all the old spelling debates in the really the 1500s, but
Yeah.
1500s and 1600s, and that was fun. I caught that example of debt. Precisely, the explanation given to me was the same one you gave, which is that somebody at some time said, "Wait a second, doesn't the Latin word have a B in it? Why are we using just a DET? This doesn't make any sense."
But like, which do you follow? What people actually say, or like, no, Latin is better than English. We should spell things like Latin, even if it makes no sense.
Even if it makes no sense, and even if French had already stopped spelling it that way long ago, we borrowed it from French. Now, when we're looking back, we're going to hypercorrect it by adding this letter that hadn't even been there in the history of French when we borrowed it. Yeah, that's that's the whole thing.
And now, I mean, in terms of what we're doing, that's an interesting thing. That's an interesting discussion to have. Whereas if you just said debt is spelled DEBT, okay, moving on. Yeah. And so what we're trying to highlight interesting things. And we trying to give a different view on things. Because before I got into all this stuff, I never even once thought about spelling. But now, the more I get into it, the more I realize English spelling is just as interesting as all these different topics.
Have you ever worked with other writing systems?
Can't say that I really have. I have learned a tiny bit of Japanese. And okay. I did kind of learn Cyrillic a little bit. I know a little bit of Cyrillic, and sometimes to be funny, I write English in Cyrillic.
That's great.
Like, how are you, my friend? Because it doesn't.
I can see it in my head. Yeah, it works.
Yeah, it's like it's like it doesn't have a h sound, so you have to write it as an X. But then that would be pronounced h. So it's so funny because I was talking to my friend, and then like his English is pretty good, but he does have a slight velar to like, how are you? And it's like, it's not very strong, but it's like, that is not the way an English native would
Well, you can correct him. I always enjoy that, though. If I have friends who have an accent, I like the exoticism about it. Not like trivializing them or just being like, oh, you're unique and quirky. But I literally enjoy that as like, oh, that's like a contribution to my language. That's what it sounds like if you grow up speaking, language X, and you also learn English. That's really cool. To me, that's really cool. It's an enriching experience. I don't know. I'm sure some people feel a little bit more like prescriptive about it. No, that cannot be a velar sound. H is never velar in English. Sorry, that's the wrong fricative.
Yes. I'm finding a problem with this interview is the topics keep on coming up that I want to talk about, and I'm like, damn it, I'm supposed to be interviewing you.
Hey, that's okay. That's what's going to happen if you talk to me. I mean, I'm just too interested in language. So
no, I think
I want to know. I want to learn. I have questions.
I think I have exactly the same thing. Yes. Okay. Well. Let me try to get this interview a bit on track.
Sure. Okay.
Okay. So like, can you run me through the process? What it actually takes to like make a video? Like, where do you get your ideas? Do you make scripts? Just like run me through the whole process.
So you want my secrets, huh? You want the recipe? You want the cookbook? I see how this is. All right. So what you're gonna need to do is write me a check for no. Nothing secret here. I think I've responded to a lot of comments that ask me specifically, what software do you use? Like, that's the secret to making a NativLang video. Or, I don't know, I've had a few other questions like, what's your process? What do you do? When do you record? And things like that. That's all good. But I think for me, the bigger picture of editing a video really starts with the ideas. I have this thing called an idea funnel, and I shovel everything into it. At least what I used to do is I used to shovel everything, all the ideas I was getting, all the ones that I thought were cool, all the ones that I keep in this hugely long file that I have now on my local hard drive. And I would just shovel those into my idea funnel, and I'd rate them, try and figure out which one was going to be the most interesting to the widest number of people, including myself. After that point, after I kind of get an idea of what the thumbnail's going to look like, what the video's going to be about, what kind of story I might be telling, what I used to do is I used to just choose one and go for it. And then from there, it would take me about I guess the range would be 50 to 150 hours of storyboarding, scripting, of course, research. This is a little out of order. Record the audio, cut the audio, do the animation, actually do the art first, feed that into my animator, do the animation, keyframe everything, render all that out, pull that into my my editor. I was going to say NLE. I'm trying to avoid technical terms here, but pull that into my editor, cut that, and render that out. Actually, put in sound effects, put in music, put in my voice, everything. Cut that all up, get it exactly how I liked it. Render that out, post that to YouTube, do all the metadata stuff, do all the captions, do the sources document. And between all of those activities, it would normally take me between 50 at the least to 150 hours to put together one animated video. I've since I started using Patreon more. I used to use it just to post creative stuff, which is a very non-standard use of Patreon, but I wasn't like, oh, give me money. I just started posting the things I was doing behind the scenes a little bit, or updates. But I now have a voting audience. Patrons are called free variants. They're free variation. You can choose. I don't know. That was kind of clever. But basically, they vote on what I was able to cull from the list, the best ideas or the most interesting ones that kind of fit a certain theme or that seem like I can group them together. And they'll get the final say and they'll hold me accountable to it. So now it's a little more of a formal process. I get a lot of suggestions. I'll save the comments to my hard drive, try and keep that wheel turning and get the ideas going.
Yes.
But once the ideas hit, once I'm actually set on doing one video, once I get that vote in and I have that confirmation that yes, you are doing, so the latest one, yes, you are doing the Caucasus, I have to do a video on the languages of the Caucasus as a language area, although it's a controversial term for the Caucasus, but it's an area of languages that are all in the Caucasus. So that's my current video I'm working on. That was voted in, I think, a week and a half ago. So now I'm setting about doing all the research, trying to find a thread. I always research towards a goal is the term I use for myself and I keep in mind. And I'm not just reading books. I'm reading books because I want to tell a certain story, because I want to figure out if this is heading in this direction or if I need, in some cases, to flip and tell a different story because this is factually incorrect or it's just not going to work.
Yes.
And that process that I'm in the middle of right now, now that I have the animation down, I know the format, I know what a NativLang video is supposed to feel like.
Yeah.
A native language video in English, that's my native language. A NativLang video is supposed to feel like. I have kind of the sense for the animation. I have a sense for that whole side of the process, what it means to do art, what kind of characters feel good in this story, in this scene. And I have not a formula, but I have a sense for that side of things. It's really the research and that researching towards a goal, that figuring out how to storyboard things, that's what takes the longest amount of time. That chunk of time, I think. So, for example, what Shakespeare sounded like that I just mentioned now probably a half hour ago, that took me about. I track all my time. This is how I know these hours. I'm not like reciting stuff off the top of my head. I have a file where I track every quarter hour that I work on a project. That took me about 160 hours total.
Oh, wow.
And there's still audio glitches in there, so technically it needs more work. But 160 hours to get what you have on YouTube right now. And what did Shakespeare sound like? What Shakespeare sounded like and how we know? Those 160 hours were very front-loaded towards researching and storyboarding and figuring out how to tie all these disparate but awesome tales together about, these spelling reformers like we were talking about, shouting at each other, telling each other to put a B in the word debt, like those kinds of things. How do I weave that in, and how long should it be? So I had this another huge long file that was full of different outlines, different ways of going about doing that, and then all my notes and questions from the various books and papers that I read. And that together, that had to take, I'm not going to say it was half of that time, but it was a lot of the time. It was a lot of that time just spent on that process. So I guess that'll give you a sense for what it takes as far as the specifics and the technical
Yeah.
stuff. That's, obviously that's a different thing.
Okay. And also I've noticed in your later videos there's a lot more animation. Like
Yes.
can you talk to me a little bit about the evolution of that? Like when did you start doing animation? When did you start learning it? And when did you start using it in your videos?
Sure, sure. Wow. So as a kid, I would sit in my room, I would pull out printer paper, and I just started. And this had to be when I was like 5 years old. I mean, I have vague memories of this, and my parents have still kept a lot of these. But I'd pull out printer paper, and I would just start drawing like picture books. I'd build my own picture, like the books they gave you as a kid. They always gave us
Yes.
these picture books with, big pictures, colorful pictures, and lots of words. I was inspired by that, and I just wanted to do that. And eventually that evolved into doing little comics, plastering my whole room, my wall, and my front door with drawings, like the whole thing. By the time I was in, I guess, coming out of grade school, going into, I guess, high school, I had, a door full of these comics and drawings and all these things. Lots of different characters. They were never super intricate, detailed, or realistic, but I always try to find ways to experiment with personality.
Yeah.
That was something that grabbed my attention. Characters were important. I mean, in a way, it was kind of helping me shape my own thoughts and feel my way through the social landscape around me. But it was also just this thing that I wanted to participate in. I wanted to make characters. I wanted to have them say funny things or say silly things. I wanted to see them around me, and that's not something that's new to me. That's something
Oh,
that's
okay.
old. I thought it's funny that really ramped down around the time that I started learning languages, trying to study an array of languages. And I guess I thought I would have left that behind, that dream of being a cartoonist, but somehow
Yes.
languages brought me right back. So yeah, the videos definitely evolved, though. It wasn't something where I jumped right back into it and started creating these amazing characters with cool personality. I had to figure out how to do it. I started with this would have been back in, I'm going to pull a year out of my hat. I guess 2012, 2013. That was when I started making videos a thing for me. I wanted to make videos. I wanted to have them come out, every month if I could. I wanted them to be more presentation style. I wanted to tackle fun topics. I had seen other YouTubers who were doing educational content that really inspired me, and I was just like enchanted by some of them. I still watch a lot of those channels. I don't want to give any plugs out there. I don't know who's into what, but I definitely saw, like you did, I saw a little bit of a gap where language was concerned. And there were other channels at the time. There's still the Virtual Linguistics Campus,
Yes.
and he does great presentations on mini topics. He eventually did mini topics. He actually used to just do longer lecture stuff. And those channels were around, and a few other people had put together cool little, I guess, sort of animated or presentation style videos. So I got into motion graphics. I was grabbing, Creative Commons images, which I still do. I try and incorporate that into the motion graphics. I was using Premiere at the time. So that wasn't something that I thought of as animating. I thought of it as, oh, here's something that I do. Here's something I had some experience in Flash. Well, I'm all over the place right now, but I had some experience in Flash. I had some experience when I was younger doing these, comics, and when I was really young making these picture books. And I wanted to do this. I had some vision for, okay, this is what a presentation should look like. This is what this topic should sound like. And I was
Yes.
feeling my way through it. So I came at editing specifically not as, oh, here's how you cut film. This is the process that we use. And look, it's all digital now.
Yeah.
Instead, for me, it was, I had this background in animation, and I had messed with programs. I had messed with 3D animators when I was a kid, all this different software. I had Flash. I did my own comics in Flash. I'm sure I'm not comics, sorry, little animations in Flash.
Yes. Yes.
I'm sure they're around somewhere on some old hard drive my parents have in their attic. But that was my approach. So keyframing, trying to figure out how motion graphics should work. For me, the editing process was, all right, I got to animate this. I got to figure out. And that drew me back in. That slowly tempted me back in. Said, come on, you want a cartoon, you want to do this again, come on.
Yeah.
I thought, no, this is just something I'm doing on the side. I have this day job and I want to make NativLang videos. I was doing more and more motion graphic stuff, more and more presentations on, that's the time that I did Language and Your Brain on Language, that's what it's called, which is about how and where, if it is somewhere in your brain, where language is in your brain, how your brain works with respect to linguistic phenomena. And that was a fun one to put together. Stuff like that. Those would be examples of what I was after, what I thought I was after. So come the end of 2013, I started to notice the Blender community. I don't know if you know anything about Blender. It's a piece of software, free and open source. I would say it's a 3D animation program, but it's kind of a beast now. It's a whole bunch of things wrapped together. And I saw that there was a tutorial online. I thought, okay, well, this is something that I used to dabble in. I did some 3D modeling in a program when I was a kid. I used something called True Space. I actually wrote the company a letter and thanked them for creating it when I was really young. But so it was kind of like this touch point, this moment where I thought, all right, well, do I want to do this? Do I really want to get into this? Do I really want to make these videos a thing? And I never answered that question. I just went for it. I just started animating. I went through not the Blender cookbook, but there's a tutorial online, kind of like a wiki thing. I went through all those exercises. I just burned through those in less than a month. And then I just started creating. I just started creating anything I could. And then I also had more traditional formats like digital drawing on free and open source software like GIMP. Eventually I moved on to a program that cost me $35, but I had to save up for that one. That took me years. I finally afforded that a couple months ago. But the process then became find stuff online that really fit that story I wanted to tell, that fit the tone I was developing, and then try at the same time to develop that storytelling ability, and then now add in this animated component.
Yes.
Now, by the beginning of, if I got my dates right, by the beginning of 2016, that had kind of led me towards, I'm just doing animation. So anything I throw into Blender, really. I draw stuff with my drawing pad. I figure out the different frames that it needs. And I do limited animation stuff, which is very inspired by, you could see it in a lot of anime, especially lower budget anime or stuff, just focusing on simple keyframes, simple expressions, drawing those things. I started incorporating more and more, and just that time to practice, that time to focus, that time to really feel out what I wanted a NativLang video to be and what the audience wanted, what all of us really wanted from this. That took me time. That took me longer than learning any software. That took me longer than changing editors, and now I don't even use Premiere anymore. I do it all in Blender, and it's, there's a lot blurrier line between what constitutes animating and what constitutes editing these days for me, but it's all keyframes. it's all keyframes and images, and it's a big blur. But somewhere in there, I found what seemed to me to be a voice that resonated more with me and with the audience in the artwork. Yes. And once that came out, I'd pin it on, really, I don't want to say this is the video that did it, but the Tibetan video. I did a video on the hardest language to spell.
Yes.
I studied a little bit of Tibetan before that, and it just inspired me to make this video. I had a friendly little nod to Zidnaf, who's another linguistics YouTuber you might be aware of. He does a lot more drawing and frames and stuff. I think he still incorporates a little bit of motion graphics, definitely some images in there. But so his video on Thai stuck in my head. So when I was learning Tibetan, I thought back to some of the points he had made. So I give him a little nod in the video and just go on a sort of fun ramble that really, to me, fit what I thought I would want to share on YouTube about why learning Tibetan, or learning the basics of the Tibetan script, to me was crazy. It was just this insane thing that there's a regularity to it if you look at it a certain way, but it is the craziest, biggest example of etymological spelling, historical spelling that I've encountered in an alphabetic type system, or one that's more towards, the I guess the phonemic or phonological side of things.
So you're saying it's almost like we're spelling Proto-Indo-European, but we're speaking English. but it represents English or something.
It's something. It really is. It's something along those lines. And it hasn't had a spelling reform in, I want to say, over 1,200 years. Maybe it's a little over 1,100 something. Yeah, literally none. So it's frozen in time in terms of the spelling. Now the language has also been conservative, at least there's a dialect continuum, but the language in Lhasa has been conservative to a degree, kind of moderately so. And the Tibetan language in general has been. So it's not the case that you're necessarily writing an entirely different language, but when it comes to the phonology, you basically, if coming at it as a layperson, you're like crossing out letters and deciding which things you're supposed to actually read. that's what it's like. It's like, okay, this makes this sound now. You don't say this, or this, and this vowel is pronounced like this because of this other thing that used to be here. And that's how you read the script. And every other word is like this in the script.
Oh, wow.
It's a lot of fun. So that video, to sort of get back to the animating side of things, that video was, for me, in a lot of ways, it was the first time I overtly recognized the wider YouTube linguistics community, which was fun, and something that I probably should do more of. At least I feel like it sometime. It was really the first time, though, that I got into this mode of the characters and the story in just this video are going to be all about the style of the story, the style of NativLang, and they're going to convey this singular point. It's going to be focused on the history of the language, which has since become the mainstay for my channel. It kind of always has been there, but as you could tell from some of the titles I mentioned earlier, language in the brain isn't language history. It's not historical linguistics, but that focus of shifting towards, okay, specific languages, specific events, specific peoples in history, something that I've always cared about anyway, that changed for me. I think that was the biggest turning point in my artwork. Actually, second biggest, the first would have been Thoth's Pill, where I said, okay, I'm going to do this entire thing, this 47 minute long thing on the history of writing, and I want it to be a more or less cohesive story that jumps between these little subworlds, and by the end of it gives you a feel for the linguistics, the different writing systems, all of the graphemics going on there.
Yes. Well, I'm assuming with the subscriber count you've got nowadays that you're doing this full time.
I am mostly doing it full time. I would say full time hours. I'm still hedging my bets, taking a lot of coding classes because that's like I said, that's my fallback. So I'm coding every day. I really am. I'm coding every day. But it is not a week goes by, I guess. I don't know. I'd have to look at my hours to make sure this is true before I commit to it. But I'd say not a week goes by that I don't put in more than full time on NativLang. That's definitely true when it comes to adding in communications and following up on stuff and all this other little stuff, but actually animating and actually making videos, it is hours wise. It's basically a full-time thing that I think could go from basically a full-time thing to definitely a full-time thing, and no concerns if I keep going down this path. If I keep being good about budgeting, which I always have been. I was once described as a very Spartan man, which I don't think fits my personality, but a CEO of a company that we worked at noticed how infrequently I would make any sort of even moderate purchases, how content I was with, simple, cheap food that was, bring some noodles and put some vegetables in it. Okay, I'm good to go. That's lunch, stuff like that. that's been sort of a very big helping hand in making this possible, is that I'm not I'm budgeting well. I'm budgeting my time decently, although I'm striving to do better on that. I've kind of overcommitted myself to other projects too, which is another note. Yeah, I do other animations. You can see some of my work on a channel called CompChop, which is
Okay.
about computer science. Well, it's really the code behind everyday life. That's the goal.
Yes.
That's the goal of that. Those presentations, or really those vlogs. And I guess in other places and other projects I've been involved in. But NativLang is, that's the goal. NativLang should be, for this to be a viable thing, and for me to keep pouring this much time into animations, which is, it's never a sure thing. This is always a risk.
Yes, yes.
I hope to see my Patreon subscribers grow. Subscribers isn't the word. Patrons grow. The people who are there are awesome already, and I've at least sent a message to everyone who comes in. I wonder, some people think it's like a form message that I send out, but every time I'll at least try and say something unique, or a little bit of a thank you to everyone who comes in and donates $1 or more. And I've got my rewards set up there, so that should grow. That's a way for people to become more of a part of the community, maybe get a little bit of art, and definitely help me out. It's a huge help, and gives me a little vote of confidence that yes, you can do this full time, and no, you don't have to quit after the summer's over, because that kind of stuff.
Yes.
So yeah, that's where I'm at. I'm in that uncertainty phase.
Oh,
I'm putting in the hours. Most of the time, and really a lot of it's driven by the fact that I love this stuff and I love the community.
yes.
There's always life stuff that comes in the way and grabs attention, and there's a lot of uncertainties. You've been there. Everyone who's listening's been there. We all feel it. So I know, I know the path that I've chosen for now, and I know the risks, and the rewards are mostly personal. And now I think a lot of people feel it too. They're contributing because they see how meaningful it is to have animations out there about the world's languages and where they come from and what in the world they are.
Yes. So what was the evolution and the growth of like your numbers over time? Like, when did you start the channel, and did it take a very long time to grow, and what was that growth like?
Yes, a very long time. So I opened the channel officially, I think my start date in YouTube is December 2008 or December 2009. I don't know which one's correct.
Okay.
I started out posting, like I said earlier, I think I mentioned it, I don't know if we were off air, but I just sat in front of a camera like everyone else, started talking about language, maybe wrote a few notes on my hand. I didn't have a script, I didn't have anything, but I enjoyed talking about, I don't know. I had a series on morphosyntactic alignment. I had a series. It was a lot of theoretical stuff. I had a few series on scripts. So I did a little, I guess it wasn't really a series, but just like a little tutorial I tried to put together, which looks so amateur now. I mean, horribly amateur. But on writing the various Greek scripts through time. I had some experience, especially when I was younger, with ancient Greek. And having sort of looked at a variety of manuscripts, being familiar with, as a layperson, not as an expert again, but being familiar with the various hands throughout Greek history, I put together some videos on, I guess, the evolution and the varieties of those scripts over time, from ancient Greece, and really pre-ancient Greece, archaic Greece, all the way up to the 1800s. Which, there's some beautiful Greek hands in that period. There's some amazing, and if you come at it as a learner who's only exposed to printed Greek, they're whimsically different. It's awesome. But that's true of a lot of scripts. But for me, one of the scripts that caught my attention for that was Greek. The other was the family of scripts that are used for writing Aramaic. So I put together tutorials on both of those, and I published some videos that may still be up on the channel. I don't know if I've unlisted them or not, but if you go through my oldest history, you'll see them somewhere. So that'll give you a date, a terminus post quem, I guess you say. you could dig up, you can unearth the history of my channel that way. Well, after that, I started doing more of the kind of videos I mentioned that were more about the theoretical topics in linguistics. And since I had a background in philosophy and logic, just taking classes and reading books as well, I'm a dabbler in this stuff. I put together a little tutorial, actually a couple, on the interface between logic and language. The first one looks at logic as a language, so teaching you how to read logic, symbolic logic it's often called. And the second one is about some of the things like interpreting truth values and some of these other things that come out of dealing with actual arguments and argumentation. So I had series like that, which probably listening to me, half the people out there, if not more, are like, okay, yeah, that's great, thanks, that's exciting. But the rest of you are thinking, wait a second, that's awesome. I should go read up on this.
Wait, I haven't watched it yet. I've got to get on that.
You can actually see most of those playlists. Any of the ones that are still listed, with the exception of maybe the scripts, if they're even listed, they're still on my channel homepage. So if you just visit youtube.com/NativLang and you keep scrolling down or opening, I don't know how you have to do it, you'll eventually get to those old playlists. It'll say like digging into technical stuff, or let's dig into more technical something along those lines. And if you find that, you'll see my logic lessons. You'll see my old presentations on the grammar of words, basics of morphology, the grammar of sentences, the basics of syntax, which is fairly weak actually. Morphosyntax, verb and its arguments, that's a decent one, although the stuff about Catalan in there, so there's some errors. These kinds of things. That was part of my evolution in history in NativLang. And I really, you could tell from my tone, I recommend any of those videos with reservation, because if you like my voice, you can listen to me talk about them, but unless you're interested in the material, it's a little dense. I was still getting my footing on YouTube, and it's a total change from what I do now. It's not very narrative focused. It's not story focused. I incorporated languages that I'd studied, so it's kind of all over the place as far as examples are concerned. You don't get a good feel for any one language, but I think there's something there. There's something of interest there.
And like I know from my experience what it's like reaching those milestones. What was it like to get your first subscriber?
Yeah,
what was it like to get your...
I didn't mention any of the numbers because you were more interested in the growth, and I'm talking about my growth as a creator still. So that's kind of selfish.
I
can remember my first milestone I paid attention to was when I got 1K subscribers. I think it's 1K. It might have been 2K. I'm not sure which it was, but that was a huge deal for me. I actually noticed in September of 2013, I noticed, I remember sitting there and I saw the thing ticking towards 2K. I thought, I gotta publish a video. So there's actually a video you can see of, I put together a quick motion graphic slideshow thanking fans, just a heartfelt, moment that I really felt it, and I just had to share it with somebody. So I shared it with I think it must have been 2K people who were subscribed at the time. And that for me was the moment where I thought, not, okay, this is going to be my thing, but I could make videos. I could do this. Like, this could be a thing this could be a side hustle. This could be a project. This could be something that I care about and put time into. And so I already had some buy-in because I loved creating the videos I was doing. The shift was more towards, I really want to make these meaningful. I want to make these experiences. I want these to be things that you want to feel excited about when they show up in your subscription feed. And I want you to care. And subscribers were, that the subscription feed was already a thing by then. All this stuff that's part of modern YouTube for the most part was a thing at that point. So I wasn't in the early days of YouTube, but that was the moment where I really shifted focus mentally and started putting time into tending to the presentation, the entertainment value, or the interest of of these videos. I don't think I
Yes.
did a great job at the outset, but I cared. I really cared.
I think my like I do YouTube, I do podcasts, I do comics. I run a page. I run a website. I'm making articles. So I'm trying to do all these different things. And really,
Yeah.
I think my YouTube is lagging behind. I think my comic is the thing that's going the best. But the thing is, there's so much time and effort just thinking about. People don't really realize how much time goes into thinking about what you want to put up.
And I don't expect them to. I mean, in a lot of ways, that's an advantage. It gives us space to create, right? Like,
Yes.
we have that time. It is a burden. It is a
Yes.
real burden. I mean, as a creator, I noticed this shift where I suddenly need lots of quiet time, but not this
Yes.
structured quiet time. It has to be time for me to sort of exert my own creativity over the space. That's
Yes,
a weird
yes.
way to put it. It sounds so metaphysical, but you gotta. I need to be able to sprawl out on a floor somewhere or sit at a desk if I want to, but have my
Yes.
stuff wherever it needs to be. I need to be able to, sketch out a character on my notebook,
Yes.
but also be able to draw something. And that process for me sometimes needs days of uninterrupted time for me to make progress. Days
Yes,
where I'm
yes.
not thinking, oh, I have this meeting, I have to talk to this guy at YouTube, I have to, do all this stuff. And that comes up for me all the time now. And it's become less and less of an option for me to be able to just have that time, unmitigated free time. But it's a necessity for making this stuff. Do you feel that too? Do you have that experience where it's like
Absolutely.
your own version?
Absolutely, because and so the main thing that I do is the comic. And you were saying how in I think 2013 you made that jump. For me,
September 20th. Well, it wasn't a jump. It was a milestone, but it was
Yeah.
that long, slow process from I don't know if I released any videos in whatever it was, 2009, let's say. I don't know if I
Yeah.
released any videos when I was that fresh on YouTube, but
Yeah.
over the time from, let's say, 2011 to 2013, there's this long, slow years of me paying some attention to it while doing other things in life and working
Yeah.
other jobs. Excuse
Yeah.
me. In 2013 and 2014 and 2015, I was still working with another job, I think mostly part-time work that I had kept up, and sometimes it would ramp up to full-time, but that I had kept along with me from a previous job where I worked. And that was still one of my main sources of income at the time.
Yeah.
So that was my focus, that was my attention. This became a sort of a pull towards creativity. Like, it's not making any money yet, but you could do something here. Sorry, I didn't mean to. I totally jumped in there, but kind of to give some perspective for anyone listening or for you.
That's fine.
It wasn't like I hit 2K overnight or even close to it, and then from 2K until now, that was a long process too. From September 2013 to
sure.
I still had, I want to say 10K subscribers in 2015, maybe 20K I hit in the beginning of 2016, and it wasn't until summer of 2016 that I got a couple hits and really started to hit my stride. And for whatever reason, things multiplied, and then there was this logarithmic growth that turned into this huge growth that catapulted me to where I am now with what Latin sounded like and how we know. That's the video that really, I think, catalyzed a lot of the newer subscribers to join. Newer, I mean, it's been a while now, but that gives you a sense more for the growth.
Yes. So what happened on my side? I've been dabbling in city linguistics since 2014. And I was doing all these different projects because I just love media so much. I love doing all different types of media. I love doing podcasts. I love doing YouTube. I couldn't just do one. So I like doing all these different things. But in 2017, I just decided, hey, I'm going to try to do this comic properly. Because that's the thing that was being most successful, and that was the thing that was the most me. Because my Facebook page, it's mostly curated content. It's content that I find out there. But the Silly Linguistics is mine. That's a comic that I make, and that's something that I'm known for, and that's something that I can build on. And that's been a very interesting process because starting in January, I told myself I'm going to make one comic every weekday, and that's a lot of work.
Yes.
It's hard enough making a comic every week. Imagine trying to make one every weekday. I don't know where I got that idea. Maybe I thought I was faster, better at doing it. But anyway, actually that it hasn't been a complete disaster. I think if any of my patrons have been paying close attention, they'll see that I don't post every single day on my Patreon the way I do on my page, and that's just because like so much work goes into building up this flow, that like what I first did when I first started making my comic in 2015 is I would make a comic and then I'll post it, and then I would honestly just forget about the comic for weeks, and I'd go, oh crap, I haven't posted in a while. I'm just gonna make one, and then in 2017 I just thought I'm gonna give this a try, and then I actually started putting together this document of like ideas and stuff, and the creation process is very unglamorous. It's like I've just got it's not even a word processor. It's literally like Notepad, and then I just write text and I'm like, this is the idea, and then I open up my photo editing program called Paint.net. I've got this template and I've got this font that I use, the Silly Linguistics font that I bought from someone, and then I'm just like, well, wouldn't it be funny if this guy said this, and I put I move the figures around, and I say this looks good, and I move the eyes around, and I write some text in, and then once I'm finished, and then I laugh, like, oh, that's funny, and then I would say that. So what happened before is I would post it straight away, and then I started building up a catalog. So I've got a backlog of these comics, and then every day, like, oh, it's 9 o'clock, okay, time to post, and then I'll post that on my page. But the problem I found is that there's so much other things I'm doing during the week. I think it might be that I'm just very industrious, but because this is a huge amount of work. I mean, if you call what we're doing right now work, then if you guys want to know, because obviously people listen to podcasts at any time of the day, but it's now 6:41 p.m. where I am, and we've been sitting here for about 2.5 hours because we were talking a little bit before the podcast, and once we finish with this podcast, I'm gonna go back to my page. I'm gonna post comics. I'm gonna chat to people. So this is a full-time job, but what's really cool about it is it's very very rewarding, and it's just great to have the stuff that like you can say is yours, and you can say this is what I want to put out in the world. This stuff is cool, and
it is.
I just want to get to the point where things can be a little bit smoother, because since I've had this backlog, it's been, I haven't yet missed a day on my page. Since the start of 2017, I posted every single weekend. I have missed on my Patreon though, because I set my Patreon up as become a patron and then you get the comics early and stuff. But the problem with that is they need to be ready. So if you're posting 106, then 111 needs to be ready to post on your Patreon. And the thing is, it like sounds so obvious to say it, but the comic doesn't exist. You can't post it. You've got to actually make these things, That's why it's so great when you have the backlog and you're like, great. All I need to do is go on my page, post a picture, and I can get on with what I'm doing. And the great thing about social media is that people find the comic and they're making comments and they're sharing and stuff. So it takes care of itself. But you still need to make the actual content, and you have to get in this rhythm. You have to get into this thing of this is what I'm trying to do, and this is how I'm going to try and do it. Because what I'm doing now is I try to make, when I do have time, I try to make 2 comics in a day. And so hopefully at some point I'll be able to make 2 comics every day. So like, and then I'm only posting 1 comic a day. So obviously then, you build up a backlog. But also, I did a crowdfunding for, a physical version of my comics, a while ago in a book form. And so what I need to do is I need to make some comics to, just as an added bonus of buying the comic. The comic is just a reprint of everything you can see on my page, but there's going to be bonus stuff that you won't see anywhere else. So I'm having to make that as well. But the creative process requires you to actually like, I'm thinking about this thing, I'm going to make it funny, like you have to be in that mode to make quality content. And the thing is, I've only ever been able to make about 2 comics a day. Because beyond that, it's just like, no, I just want to sit here and post cat pictures on my Facebook page. I don't want to do anything else, because it's amazing how much work being offhandedly funny is.
How hard it is just to appear casually funny.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. I think the iceberg metaphor is pretty good for that, right? I mean, basically with any creative endeavor, you do see that I guess that output, that whatever it is, that entertainment value from that.
Yeah.
But you don't see all the work behind the scenes, like you mentioned before. You don't see everything that goes into it. You don't see that mountain lurking below the surface that has to support that.
Yeah.
And I think in a lot of ways, the advantage as a creator is you get to show people glimpses of that. You get to show people, like, if you mastered this, or if you really understood this, you'd get this punchline, or you'd be able to see this more. I try and hide things in my video like that, little extras, or not even hide them, but include them and incorporate them, just to have that understanding that, behind that tip you see floating on the surface of the ocean, there's actually there's an iceberg of work that went into this. Well, and not just my work, but, for you to tell a joke, you need to have the linguists to have gone out there and researched the thing and have published on it, and then that to have reached, the mainstream understanding of us who are fans of linguistics.
Absolutely. And stuff, and it's so funny. Like I can give a bit of a background on behind the things that are deadly boring, but just to give you an idea of the kind of things that have evolved over time is. When you start any project, there's this very interesting genesis in that you can define things that are going to be said for a very long time. So my main idea for the comic is I saw some comics sometimes make language jokes, and I was like, no, this is not good enough. We need a dedicated language comic. Every single comic is going to be something about language. And I thought, so the language people are really going to enjoy it. And sometimes it's going to go over their head, but then if you really care about language, you're going to be like, I want to know what this is from. And so I said, this is going to have my brand on it. This is going to have my name, Cellular Linguistics. It's not so much that I care that like Rolf Weimar, I don't care my personal name get out there. I don't care about that. But I want the Cellular Linguistics thing to get out there. I want people to associate language with fun. Not so much amo, amas, amant, that kind of stuff.
Sure.
And then they roll their eyes and languages. And then I also put a number on it because I want it to be like, if people see Cellular Linguistics 102, it's like, he's already made 100 of these, So that was the interesting thing that I thought. So there was the 2 main things: the name and the number was at the very beginning that I have to put that in, and I was going to make it a classic 4-panel comic, and But since then, there's been a very interesting evolution because I play with the style a lot. Sometimes I literally don't even make a joke. I just say, "Here's an interesting language thing," and you can't stop me.
This is my creative outlet. You're gonna have this.
Yeah, it's like this is not funny, but I'm allowed to do whatever I kind of want with my comics. So here you go.
So you still have your creative control there, and you exercise it.
Yes. I don't do that often, but if I'm not feeling it especially funny, or I just want to do something cool, like things languages do. I call it the series is called Things Languages Do, and I will talk about evidentiary markers, and I was talking and I showed how like you could just put a suffix on a word, and that meant I saw it, and you put a suffix that meant I experienced it, or I heard that someone did this, and so I do things like that. And have you seen the movie Arrival?
No, I still haven't. It's been recommended for the umpteenth time, but I still haven't.
Yes,
I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, or I'm gonna be booed off your show for it. But I still haven't seen it.
Yeah. And so I made a comic with that movie is about these nonlinear communication systems. So what I did with my comic is I took 4 squares and I put them in a circle, and so I wrote little things in the squares, and then I had like arrows. No, I didn't actually have arrows, but I explained that like you can read this clockwise or anti-clockwise, and then I really like playing with the form of it, and so I've done a full page, like 1 panel comic. I've done 2 panel comics where there's 2 horizontal. I haven't yet done 2 vertical, and like I just like playing around with those things, but also another very interesting thing. I mean, this is very niche, but I think this is interesting to me, is that how the process has changed over time. Because, like when I started it, I would just copy the things and write some text. Oh, look at you. And then over time, I'm like, well, I want this joke. Like what I want to do, I have a joke. I have an idea. Like, here's a strange word in a language, and then I often have like a bunch of these blogs like I'm German, I'm Catalan or whatever, and they will say the word, and then this thing says a word, and everyone goes what? And so over time these many formats have started up. But what I would do is I would open the old file and then save it as a new name and then just change things. But like I was very kind of slapdash when I first started making them, and so like I can put this over here, I can put this over here, and then the other day I actually had to go through all my comic and like remove all the white space because I left some white space in there, and like as you drag and drop and cut, like there was like white space randomly distributed all over the background. You can't see it because PNG is just a flat image, but in the source files it was all over. Like if you turn off the background, it's just a complete mess. And so I had to go through each file because what had happened is that when I make new comics, what I do is I say, okay, I want a 1 panel comic. So
you have a template, right?
Yes, I just scroll back and I go to like number 30 or whatever, and I save that as number 90. But now, if that 30 had a messy background, then now 90 has got a messy background. So it's almost like it's breeding.
It's accreting over time.
Yeah. And so I have to go through each. At one point, I actually had to go through each one and like check, does it have a messy background, and change it, and sometimes even retype it, and like. That's something I never would have thought of. Like, you are in the future going to spend 3 hours removing white space from your source files.
Yeah, so many things like that come up, don't they? It's just
yes. But I really feel great when I complete them because I'm like, this is something that has come up and I've completed it. And like, this has come about, I already had this problem because I set about to make comics, and I'm almost pleased because it's like, I created this problem. Like, this is only here because of me. like, do you ever feel like that? Like, you're responsible for the good and the bad that's happening in your life at the moment?
Absolutely. Sometimes to my own detriment, but I definitely, I mean, you keep track of your failures, right? We're humans. Yes. We notice when it just looms so large. So those little moments of sort of little mistakes and failures along the way, they definitely build up in my memory. But I don't know. I guess, I don't know if you have this too, but as a creator, there's this weird relationship with my own works and even with other people's works. But when I'm creating something specifically, it's with my own works, where it feels like, not that, okay, I made this thing and I made all the decisions about it, and then today I decided to do this thing. But just like with your white space example, there's, or I guess white pixels, right?
Yeah.
It's a raster image. So there's these things that come about that either I'm somehow obligated to, or I have to do these things. Like the image tells me that I need it to be this way, or this is clearly wrong. It's like I'm in the system where I'm communicating with these works. I'm signing myself up for things that down the road I'm like, oh yeah, if I did have a Tibetan monk, he would have to look like this, and I'd have to do folds in his garments, and that would be a whole other thing. And do I want to do that? I mean, how am I going to do that? Should I do that? Should I animate that, or should it, which I ended up doing, to just draw him in the image, that kind of stuff. Like there's all these little things that come about, and they're not always, I can't always pin them on success, or I guess tag them as success or failure, but all of these crazy contingencies.
Yeah, but also another very, very interesting thing is that being a creator is you're the gatekeeper to your own output, and then I really feel a bit like I'm herding cats at some point. It's like, what is funny about this? Like, can I make this funny? Is this funny? Do I like it? Like, I'm perfectly happy to put out things that other people would like, but it's like you're always in this position of, I just think of ideas. Like, if I would think of an idea off the top of my head, like, oh, the word croissant comes from wherever it comes from, and like I could probably make a joke or a pun about that, and then I would look back at it and. First of all, what I do is imagine it in my mind, and then if I laugh just at the idea of it, then I go, oh, that like, I had an idea. I'm laughing already. Like, I had an idea. What I'm going to do is I'm going to reinterpret proverbs. So I thought, I just had this idea. I start with general ideas, like I'm going to make a joke about a word, or I'm going to make a joke about a proverb or whatever, and then go down from there. And then I thought, how about actions speak louder than words? And so obviously that's saying that it's more important for you to do something than for you to say something. Yeah. But I thought, what if you interpreted that literally? So there's two things that are labeled actions.
Yeah, I actually just saw that one this morning. I was going through your old feed.
It's like, why are they talking to them? Don't you know? Actions speak louder than words. Yeah. And then when I had that idea, I just thought, that's a great idea. But other times, like, I really, really, really wanted to make a joke about this one thing. Like, I forget what it is now because I gave up on it because like it was just too tricky to turn into a joke. But it's like, I think it was about the word barn. I think that. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and the one podcast I listen to is the History of English. And what happened is I learned the etymology of the word barn, and I was like, let me just look it up quick because I think that will remind me what this thing was about. So barn is. Means barley house, apparently, and so I had this idea that what I wanted to do is I wanted to make a play on words, of this word, but like you need to know the etymology first. Like you need to know the etymology. So if you do know the etymology, you're like, oh, I see what you did there.
That's tricky.
And so what I had to do, if you did know the etymology, I could make the joke. But the thing is, what I wanted to do is, I would then have to set up the etymology in the joke.
Right.
And I kept on coming out with this thing. Well, did you know that etymology is that? Okay, now on with the joke. Like that is not a very good thing because the thing is, most of the things that I do, unless it's a very simple like, oh look, don't you think it's so weird that Armenian had the word yurku? That's an easy joke to make. Not so easy is something like actions speak louder than words. The joke only works because people already know the saying.
Right.
And so I'm constantly in this space of like, what is my material and is this material relatable? And by relatable I mean like, as language nerds, like, is this something everyone knows? It's like, it's a super niche. Like, Lithuanian is one of the most conservative Indo-European languages. So,
right.
One of the first comics I made was, like, I heard just really weird languages sound like Proto-Indo-European. It's like, oh, it was probably Lithuanian. And like, I showed it to someone and I said, that's very niche, you know?
Yeah.
But then, like, I've had such great comments on that. Because people are like, oh, my native language is so cool because people get the joke. So,
right.
You honestly can never tell what's going to be successful.
Yeah, I think in cases like that, you really have to know who you're playing to, right?
Yes.
That's going to be key.
Yes. All right. Well, we can probably talk for hours though. I think that the Skype is already at like 3 hours. So I wanted to thank you for coming on and talking to me about what you do.
Sure. Thanks for inviting me and for chatting me up about language and also about, I guess that was before this started, but the Atlantean, is that correct? Proto-Atlantean reconstruction?
Yes.
That was interesting.
If people don't know, before we started recording, I told Josh all about my Atlantean project. That
he was even giving me some of the phonological rundown there, the history of things, the different languages and dialects. It's a real thing. I'm a believer now.
Atlantean is a mother of language.
That's right.
You must tell everyone. All right. Thanks so much, Josh.
Sure.
Say goodbye.
Good night.
Okay. So don't forget to check out Silly Linguistics on Facebook and sillylinguistics.com. Cheers, guys.